If someone handed me a time machine and said, you've got a few minutes to talk to your younger self, I'd say you're not broken, but everything that you've been taught about manifesting your desires is backwards. What I'm about to share with you took me over 20 years to find out, but once I did, I manifested my soulmate, my dream home, and a purpose filled, fulfilling life. And if you've ever felt that the law of attraction isn't working for you, this is exactly what's missing. Let's get started. So in my 20s, I was into sex, drugs, and classical music. I believed that I needed mind-altering substances to cope with my social anxiety. And one day after a concert, I'm driving home. I've got an open can of beer in the car. I've got some illegal substances, texting my girlfriend when I see the sirens flashing behind me. And I start freaking out. Cop pulls me over and he says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I said, "Why?" And he says, "Because you were texting and driving." And in a panic, I just admitted I got an open can of beer in the car and I've got some marijuana. Had more than that, but that's what I admitted to. And he says, "What in the hell were you thinking?" And I said, "Well, I was, celebrating a concert." He says, "What do you play?" I say, "Violin." He pauses what seemed like an eternity and he says, "I love the violin. I'm going to write you up for a texting ticket. Make this stuff disappear by the time I get back." And I was so relieved. And I said, "I'm going to vow at this moment to raise my vibrational frequency so I never have to go through this again." And the way I did it was by resetting my subconscious mind. I laid out the exact framework that I used to do that. And I'll leave a link down in the description that you can download for free. Now, the second thing I would say is that manifestation is about uncovering what's always been there. 3 months ago, we were in Ixtapa, Mexico on a pickleball trip. We took some friends with us. And while we were there, we met this really amazing community of people. And one of the guys was a pickleball coach. He found out that I coach as well, and he starts asking me about my programs and how I coach groups of people. He went on to tell me about this idea that he had of how to structure a group training program. And I was blown away. It was such a great idea. And I said, I can do this too. So I got home and now we run that exact same program every Sunday and it brings in about $500 an hour. You see, we were on vacation. We were having fun. We were in the right vibration to receive that information, to experience what was always there. I always had the ability to do that. It just took being in the right frequency. See, as you begin to raise your vibrational frequency, you begin to perceive what's always been there. The third thing I would say is that you shift through billions of parallel realities every second. You see, everything is here and everything is now. And reality is kind of like the film on a film strip. Back in the 20s, you used to shine the film through the light of the projector, and on the screen, you would experience continuity. You would experience motion. And that's exactly how three-dimensional reality works. Because everything is here and now, every single moment, you are a totally different person. And when you start to understand that your brain is constantly reorganizing itself, your cells are always dying off and reproducing new ones. It becomes a game of being aware of who you're shifting into moment after moment after moment and choosing the version of you that you want to be right now. And the second you do that, you begin experiencing the life of that person. When you start to think like that version of you that already has what you want, when you start to feel like that person that already has what you've been looking for, you begin to attract to you all of the people, the circumstances, and the things that you need to be that version of you. The fourth thing I would say is you must act, and you must act on your passion if you want to become more of who you truly are. About 3 months ago, I was giving a talk in our community, in our WhatsApp community, and I'm talking about this concert that I'm going to play. And one of the members reached out to me and says, "I have a bow that my mom left me. And people say it's a really nice bow, and I'd like you to play on it." She brings it over, I start playing on it, and it is like a dream. Come to find out that this bow is worth over 10 times what my previous bow was worth. And I had been thinking about upgrading my instrument all along. And it wasn't until I was acting on my passion by creating this message for my community and by playing music, which I'm so passionate about, that I raised my vibrational frequency and attracted the perfect solution to be able to play with a higher quality instrument. When you act on your passion to the best of your ability, you take it as far as you can until you can't take it any further, and you do it with no attachment to the outcome. You raise your vibrational frequency and you attract all the things that you need to you to become the highest version of yourself. Learn that formula from Bashar, who's fantastic. Now, the fifth thing I would say is meditate before you pick up your phone. When I was 20, I started my mornings by smoking weed, playing video games, and generally acting like a hooligan. And my life, understandably, was a mess. All of my energy was going into activities that disempowered me. When I started meditating in the morning, I stopped putting my attention on all the things outside of me that was causing this sense of lack inside of me. Now, you don't have to meditate for an hour every day, but if you started with 5 to 15 minutes, you would find yourself happier, healthier, and just on a much better trajectory in your life. You know, when I was in grad school, I had a mountain of student debt and I needed to make some money. So I knew how to coach tennis and I figured I'd make a Craigslist ad. So this guy responds and he says, I'd love to work with you. How much do you charge? I say $50 an hour. And he says, great. We have our first lesson together. And he says, I'm a branding expert. I know how to build websites, and I was a very high-level soccer coach. Why don't I pay you half of your normal rate? I'll build you a website. I'll show you how to market yourself, and I'll show you how to really structure your programs so you attract higher quality clientele. Now, if I had limited my definition of abundance to money, I would have said, that's great, but no, I need the $50 an hour, please. And because I accepted the trade, I went on to make thousands and thousands of dollars and frankly wouldn't be where I am today with my own tennis court if that weren't the case. So accepting other forms of abundance is really important. When I was struggling to make rent in our 2-bedroom apartment, my friend pulls me to the side and he says, let's go out for breakfast. And he starts asking me all these questions. What's your social security number? What's your permanent address? I said, Bill, are you planning to kill me? What's going on? And he says, no, I'm going to leave you $200,000 in my will and I want to know where I need to send it. So you could be given a gift. That's another form of abundance. During COVID, all the tennis courts are locked down and I'm suddenly up, what creek without a paddle when I get a call from a friend and he says, you're not going to believe this, but I was just walking through the store and I met this woman who says that you coached 9 years ago. And we got to talking, we found out that we both know you. And she says, if you need a place to coach, just call her. She's got a tennis court in the backyard. It's the same court that I coached her on. I call her, we have this amazing conversation, and we end up buying the house from her. So synchronicity is another form of abundance. A few weeks ago, I had a dream about this idea for a video that I put on this channel, and I woke up and that video has gotten 170,000 views. So imagination is another form of abundance. When you stop defining abundance as just money and you open up to the various ways that the universe can bring you what you need, not only do you gain the true definition of abundance, which is the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it, you also open the door for more money. Now, the next thing I would say is that gratitude turbocharges the law of attraction. A year ago, we're at Mission Beach, we're on vacation, and Raquel and I both decide we're not going to do any work. Okay? We're just going to enjoy the beach. We're going to be grateful. We're going to love this time that we have together and not think about our business. And of course, that day we get an email from La Roche-Posay, which is a cosmetics brand, and they say, we want to shoot a commercial with ATP player Taylor Fritz. And you can see the picture right here. Taylor was on our court. They paid us thousands of dollars for that shoot, and all we had to do was hang out inside and enjoy the show. When you combine gratitude with a clear intention, you have the perfect formula to manifest what you need. Now, the next thing I would say is that you already have it. When I was a kid, I was a shy, awkward teenager, not a recipe for getting a lot of dates, as you might imagine. And I got into college, and eventually I said, this is ridiculous. I was so terrified to go up to a girl and talk to her. I said, I'm going to buy the books, I'm going to do the seminars with these pickup artists. And one of the things they said is when you walk into a room, you got to imagine that these girls are crawling all over you. and that you're fighting them off with a stick, and it's like, oh God, I got to go on another date. And it was this really weird mindset shift. And it felt really embarrassing and awkward. But what I was doing clearly wasn't working. So I decided to give it a whirl. And shortly thereafter, I met Raquel. I, and we got married and, are living happily ever after. So the idea is that when you embody the energy of the person that already has what you desire, you begin to attract it to you. The next thing I would say is that affirmations can be tricky. So we were in grad school and we formed this mastermind. And this group of guys got together. And at the end of every session, we would get up and in full throat, with all the energy we could muster, would give our affirmations. And it'd be like, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I'm excited, I'm wealthy. And when I got to wealthy, I'd be, I'm wealthy? And I would kind of choke because I did not feel wealthy. And in fact, every time I had an affirmation about wealth or abundance, I would feel this complete discord inside of my body. And as you might imagine, we didn't have any money when I was doing those. So the idea is that you have to have the inner knowing that you are who you say you are in these affirmations. And if you don't, then you have a subconscious belief that's blocking your ability to truly feel that affirmation. And that's where the subconscious reset comes in. Make sure you download that at the end of this video. The next thing I would say is that any tool or technique that you're attracted to using in order to generate this law of attraction inside of you is perfectly good. It's a permission slip, like this Vogel cut crystal that I heard about. Marcel Vogel found this way of creating a crystal that can store information and you can charge it. And I loved this concept, and so I went out and bought one, and I use it regularly. But the idea is that ultimately, you are the permission slip. And whatever technique or whatever tool you are drawn to use, go ahead and use, but understand that you are the one that's creating the feeling inside of you that's allowing you to manifest what you need. Now, the next thing I would say is you got to master heart brain coherence. Now, I was in a meditation, and in this meditation, I had my attention on my heart, and I was feeling this feeling of love inside of me. And I would imagine this feeling going up to my brain. And when your heart and brain are synchronized, it's like you have this Wi Fi signal that's able to project your intentions and pull those experiences back to you. When I got out of that meditation, I had manifested a new client. Raquel told me she had made a ribeye steak for dinner, which is my favorite dinner. And a bunch of other amazing things happened. But the idea is when you place your hand on your heart, and you sense that feeling of your heart, and you begin to breathe into your heart, you begin to create coherence in the heart. And your heart will inform your brain, and you will become more coherent. And when you're more coherent, your intentions are more powerful, and you'll manifest things a lot faster. Now, the next thing I would say is that you got to be intentional with your environment. So, second year of grad school, I'm at the height of my shenanigans and I'm living with five guys. And every time I got home, they're drinking or smoking something. And it was very difficult to control myself in that environment because that's what everybody was doing. Your environment, by the way, can be your physical environment, it can be your mental, emotional environment, and it can be what you're putting into your body. But the idea is, it was a lot easier for me to not drink tequila at 11 a.m. as soon as I moved out of that house. It would have been very difficult to get on the right track as long as I was living there. So make sure your environment sets you up for success. Next, I would say that feeling good matters a lot. So we're on this vacation in the Philippines a few years ago, and we needed to do laundry. We were running out of clothes. So we go down to the laundromat, we got to get all our stuff squared away. And when we get home, Raquel starts freaking out. She's like, I left my purse at the laundromat. Now we're in a third world country. She's got all of her cash, all of her credit cards, and all of our passports in this bag. So suddenly our freedom is in jeopardy and she's freaking out. And I say, you know what? We've been studying this stuff, and this is the time that we need to demonstrate that we actually understand it. So that night, I led us on a meditation. My daughter, my wife, and I are laying in bed, and I say, close your eyes and imagine that this woman who owns the laundromat is coming out. She's got the purse, she's smiling ear to ear, and it's intact. All the money's there, all the credit cards are there, all of our passports are there. And we do that the entire night. We do it over and over and over again until we drift off to sleep. And sure enough, the next morning we show up and it happened almost exactly that way. We felt the feelings of relief. We felt the feelings of joy and of happiness. And when we memorized that emotion and we combined it with that clear intention, we manifested it exactly that way. Now, the next thing I would say is synchronicity is a real thing. So, about 3 years ago, we're on a drive up to the mountains and we're going to look at some investment properties. That morning, I had done a meditation by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and we were listening to this book that I love called The Celestine Prophecy. Great book, by the way. And we get up to the first property, and I go up the stairs, I hang a left, and there on the nightstand are the two books at the bottom of a stack, the Becoming Supernatural right on top of the Celestine Prophecy. And I start screaming at the top of my lungs. Raquel's like, what's going on? And I tell her what happened, and she's just like, I can't believe it. Like, synchronicity is such an amazing thing. We didn't end up buying that house. We bought the next one that we watched. But the idea is we were in this amazing state. And when you raise your energy, synchronicity becomes the organizing principle that will bring you everything that you need in order to continue acting on your passions. The last thing I would say is that knowing is doing. If I asked you to raise your right hand right now in exchange for $1 million, you would do it. You wouldn't think twice about it because you know that you can raise your right hand. And if you truly know something, then it's in your actions. You're demonstrating it in your behavior. And if you're not acting on it yet, all that means is that you have a subconscious block that's keeping you from acting on it. That's why you should download the Subconscious Reset and go through that program. And if you want to learn more about subconscious reprogramming, watch this video next.